Captain Aidan Marks sat in the pilot's seat of the Starfare, the human exploration vessel that had carried him across dozens of light years to the Zarathis system. His heart beat fast, not just because of the anticipation, but because he knew this mission was unlike anything humans had attempted before. The Velari, the aliens that ruled this system, were famed for their beauty, their intelligence, and their absolute belief that humans were primitive. Most humans would have been intimidated, but Aidan had never been most humans. The ship's sensors beeped softly, indicating that they had reached the orbit of Zarathis Prime, the planet where the Velari Council held its meetings. Aidan looked down through the viewport at the shimmering cities below. They floated like silver droplets across the surface, connected by thin, luminous bridges. It was breathtaking. Every instinct in him told him to admire the view, but his mission was clear. Make contact, learn about the Velari, and prove that humans could be allies, not just curiosities. Aidan stood, stretched, and adjusted the straps of his exploration suit. His crew, a small team of humans trained in diplomacy and science, were already busy checking systems and preparing their landing. None of them had expected this level of grandeur from the Velari world, and even Aidan found it hard not to feel a pang of awe. He shook it off. Awe was dangerous when diplomacy was on the line. The landing was smooth. The Starfare hovered above a massive plaza, the structure made of a transparent material that seemed to glow from within. As the landing gear touched the surface, Aidan felt the vibrations through his boots. He took a deep breath and walked down the ramp. The first thing he noticed was the Velari. They were taller than humans, with elongated limbs and features that seemed almost sculpted from light. Their skin shimmered faintly under the sunlight, and their eyes reflected colors humans could not even name. The Velari moved with grace, a rhythm that humans lacked. Every movement seemed deliberate, measured, perfect. And then he saw her. Lyra stepped forward from the crowd of Velari officials. Her presence was magnetic, almost overwhelming. Aidan's first thought, embarrassingly, was that she looked like something out of a dream. She noticed him immediately, her eyes narrowing slightly, as if trying to measure the audacity of a human daring to step onto Velari soil. "Hey, beauty queen," Aidan said with a grin that was meant to be charming. Lyra's head snapped toward him, her expression sharp. "Watch your mouth, human," she said, her voice carrying a tone of authority that immediately silenced the murmurs around her. Aidan's heart skipped a beat. He had expected suspicion, curiosity, perhaps even some hostility, but not outright anger. Still, he stood his ground, offering a small, respectful bow. "I apologize if I offended. I meant no harm. I just thought a greeting might be friendly." Bold to the point of foolishness. "If you survive this meeting, you may learn something of our ways." The humans behind him were equally awed but kept their composure, trained as they were for such first contacts. The Velari Council chamber was massive, circular, with floating platforms that served as seats for the council members. Each member exuded authority and intelligence, their eyes glinting as they observed the humans with a mixture of curiosity and mild disdain. Aidan noticed how silent the room was, how every sound seemed amplified, every movement observed. "Captain Marks," Lyra said, leading him to a place at the perimeter of the chamber. "The Council is not accustomed to having humans among them. Speak carefully, act deliberately, and perhaps you will leave here unharmed." He had expected danger in the sense of verbal or political conflict, but the weight of this warning made his heart race. He nodded, acknowledging her words. "Understood." They asked questions about human technology, about the way humans lived, about why humans traveled so far from their own world. Aidan answered honestly, carefully choosing his words. He emphasized cooperation, curiosity, and the human ability to adapt and learn quickly. It was not easy. The Velari prided themselves on precision and logic, and their skepticism toward humans was clear. Every answer seemed to spark a small debate among them. Yet Aidan's calm confidence, combined with his genuine respect for Velari culture, slowly began to gain small nods of acknowledgement from some council members. Then, without warning, an emergency alarm rang. A small Velari child had wandered into the chamber, clearly lost and scared. The Velari security drones hovered uncertainly, unsure how to handle the situation without harming the child. Without thinking, Aidan stepped forward. "Let me help," he said. Moving quickly, he crouched and spoke softly to the child, calming it. He scooped the little Velari up gently, carrying it to a safe platform away from the council's proceedings. The council members watched silently, and even Lyra's sharp gaze softened as she saw him in action. "You act with courage," she said quietly, almost to herself, "and without fear of their disapproval." The council members murmured among themselves, a subtle shift in their demeanor. Lyra leaned close to him, lowering her voice. "Perhaps humans are not as foolish as I thought," she said, a hint of a smile breaking her otherwise stern expression. Aiden felt a rush of relief and pride. "We have our ways," he replied softly. "Sometimes they work better than you think." Even small jokes or observations, like pointing out that the council's floating platforms reminded him of playground swings, elicited faint smiles. By the end of the day, the humans had not only survived but had impressed the Velari in ways no one had predicted. Aiden's crew exchanged quiet glances, a mixture of relief and amazement. They had heard tales of Velari arrogance and disdain, but the humans had navigated the encounter with courage, intelligence, and just enough charm to make a difference. As the council adjourned, Lyra approached Aiden once more. "You are fortunate," she said. "Many humans would have failed by now. Perhaps there is potential in your kind." "We humans have a way of surprising people," he said. Lyra's eyes met his, and for a moment there was a connection, one that went beyond words or culture. It was curiosity, respect, and something neither fully understood yet. She gave a small nod and walked away, leaving Aiden with a sense of accomplishment and a racing heart he could not explain. As the humans returned to the Starfire, Aiden couldn't stop thinking about Lyra and the Velari. He had expected a simple diplomatic mission, but it was clear that this encounter would be far more complex, far more challenging, and far more important than anyone had anticipated. And somewhere deep inside, he felt the thrill of what was to come, the challenges, the dangers, and the chance to prove that humanity, underestimated and often dismissed, could hold its own among the stars. Aiden stood on the ship's observation deck as they lifted off from the plaza, staring at the shimmering city below. He knew that this was only the beginning. Humans had entered Velari space as guests, but they would leave their mark as equals, not inferiors. And as he thought of Lyra, her piercing gaze and unexpected warmth, he realized that this mission was about more than exploration. It was about showing the universe what humans could truly achieve. The stars stretched endlessly before them, full of possibilities, challenges, and the promise of adventure. And for the first time in a long while, Captain Aiden Marks felt completely alive, ready to face whatever the universe and the Velari could throw at him. Captain Aiden Marks returned to the Starfire with his crew, their minds buzzing from the events of the day. The Velari Council had not only tolerated their presence, but had also allowed a human to demonstrate courage in front of their highest officials. Aiden knew that this was no small feat. Velari society had long viewed humans as impulsive and weak, yet somehow today they had seen something else. The ship hummed softly as it drifted above Zaratha's prime. Aiden leaned against the observation window, watching the glowing cities fade beneath them. His thoughts kept drifting back to Lyra. There was something in the way she had observed him, her piercing eyes, her judgment that shifted subtly when he had saved the Velari child. She was proud, confident, and untouchable in ways humans rarely encountered. And yet, for a brief moment, she had acknowledged him, not as a human, but as someone capable. "Captain, we've received a transmission from the Velari Council," said Lieutenant Margot, Aiden's communications officer. Her voice was steady, though her eyes reflected the same excitement he felt. "They want to continue the discussions tomorrow. They've requested your presence. Prepare the crew, but keep it informal. I want to see how far we can push their expectations." The Velari were the first test. The next morning, the humans were transported to the Velari Council building again, this time under a more formal escort. The council chamber was filled with soft, radiant light, and the air vibrated with a quiet energy that humans struggled to describe. Aiden felt the familiar mix of awe and tension settle in his chest. Lyra awaited them at the entrance, her posture rigid but her eyes betraying curiosity. "Captain Marks," she said, her tone measured, "the Council wishes to observe how humans interact with our society. They are particularly interested in your problem-solving skills." "Then I will do my best to show them what humans can do." Aiden answered carefully, explaining human approaches to problem-solving, improvisation, teamwork, and creativity. He emphasized that humans thrived in uncertainty where rules were not always fixed. Several council members murmured among themselves. A few tilted their heads, intrigued. Humans' unpredictability was difficult for them to categorize. Their logic sought patterns, but human behavior was often illogical in ways that produced surprising results. The discussion shifted when a Velari envoy described a technical problem with the city's energy grid. The issue was complex, requiring both precision and quick thinking. The council asked if humans could offer a solution. Aiden's mind raced. He could have provided a theoretical answer, but he knew the Velari valued action over abstraction. "May I demonstrate?" he asked. Lyra's eyes narrowed. "You may, but know that failure carries consequences." The system was unlike anything humans had seen, a series of floating conduits and energy nodes that adjusted dynamically to the planet's needs. The problem was a cascading failure in one sector, threatening to disrupt the city's power balance. Aiden studied the system for a moment. His hands hovered over the controls as he assessed the situation. The Velari system relied on precise calculations, but humans often solved problems differently, intuition combined with rapid testing. He rerouted several energy flows temporarily, creating a buffer that stabilized the system. Then, using a pattern of adjustments that seemed random but was guided by his understanding of energy flow, he corrected the underlying problem. The lights in the chamber flickered and the council members gasped softly. The city's energy grid stabilized perfectly. Aiden stepped back, breathing steadily. "Problem solved," he said. A long silence followed. Then Lyra spoke, her voice calm but carrying a note of admiration. "You are unpredictable, human, yet effective. That is something our kind rarely sees. We learn by doing, by testing the boundaries. It's not always elegant, but it works." Aiden answered honestly, speaking of humanity's capacity for compassion, courage, and resilience. He emphasized that humans could adapt to extreme conditions and were capable of forming bonds that transcended logic. Lyra watched him closely, noting how calmly he defended human values even under pressure. She could see the courage in his eyes, the way he met scrutiny without flinching. It was a trait Velari rarely encountered. Later, as the session ended, a Velari official approached Aiden. "There is a matter we wish to discuss privately. It concerns a rogue faction that threatens stability in our system. You may be able to assist. They do not anticipate that you can act decisively under pressure, or that you can solve problems without relying solely on technology. Your abilities may prove crucial." They had disrupted trade routes, sabotaged energy systems, and aimed to seize control of key planetary facilities. Their strategy was meticulous, but predictable in its over-reliance on logic. Humans, with their ability to improvise, could counter them in ways Velari could not. Aiden felt the familiar thrill of a challenge. The mission was dangerous, but it was exactly what humans excelled at: uncertainty, improvisation, and courage. He proposed a plan that relied on speed, unpredictability, and human ingenuity. Lyra listened, skepticism in her eyes, but she could not deny the logic behind his approach. "You are audacious," she said, "and reckless, yet you may succeed where others fail. That's the human way." The following day, Aiden led a small team of humans and Velari volunteers to intercept the rogue faction's sabotage mission. They moved quickly, navigating the alien landscape with both technology and intuition. The Velari drones were precise but rigid. Humans provided creativity and adaptability. Together, they formed a team that neither species could have accomplished alone. When the rogue faction's plan was discovered, Aiden quickly devised a countermeasure. It relied on calculated improvisation, rerouting energy flows, creating diversions, and predicting the enemy's next move based on behavior rather than logic. The plan worked perfectly. The faction was caught off guard, and the threat was neutralized without any casualties. Lyra observed from a distance, impressed. "Humans, you are remarkable," she said softly, almost to herself. "Your courage, your unpredictability, it is something we cannot ignore. I see now why the Council allowed you here. You have proven potential, not just for yourself, but for your species." As the ship prepared to leave the planetary surface, Aiden gazed out at the shimmering cities of Zaratha's prime. The stars stretched endlessly above, full of unknown challenges and possibilities. Humans had entered a world that did not believe in them, yet they had left a mark, however small. Lyra approached the observation deck, her eyes reflecting the glow of the city below. "Captain Marks," she said quietly, "your kind is fascinating. I do not yet understand you, but I wish to learn." For the first time, he felt that humans were not merely visitors in the Velari system. They were participants, capable of shaping events in ways the Velari had never imagined. And somewhere deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning. Humans were underestimated, dismissed, and doubted, But Aiden Marks had shown that bravery, ingenuity, and determination could turn the impossible into reality. And as the Starfarer lifted into the stars, he felt a thrill of anticipation. The universe was vast, and humanity had only just begun to prove itself. The Starfarer drifted silently above the glowing cities of Zaratha's prime. Captain Aiden Marks leaned against the observation deck's railing, thinking about the events of the past days. Humans had already begun to show the Velari that they were not as weak or primitive as the Council had assumed. Yet, Aiden knew that true respect was earned in danger, not in polite conversation or successful problem-solving. And the Velari system was full of danger. A warning message blinked on the console. Lieutenant Margot called out, "Captain, sensors have detected unusual activity near the Eastern Energy Hub. It matches the rogue faction's profile." They were confident in their numbers, their strategy, and their superior technology. But they had underestimated one crucial factor: humans. As they approached the hub, Aiden could see the rogue faction moving with precision. Floating vehicles glided above the facility, and automated drones scanned for intruders. The Velari volunteers hesitated, worried about the risk, but Aiden's calm presence inspired them. "Listen carefully," he said, addressing both his human crew and the Velari allies. "We will split into two groups. One will disable their communications to slow their coordination. The other will secure the hub's core systems. Trust your instincts." Humans and Velari together can adapt faster than they expect. "That is our advantage." One of the Velari volunteers whispered nervously, "Captain, the energy flow is unstable. We should wait for the drones to pass." Every human instinct, every small calculation guided his actions. When a drone hovered too close, he threw a small energy disruptor, temporarily blinding its sensors. Lyra watched, astonished at his quick thinking. The rogue faction noticed the intrusion and scrambled. Alarms blared, red light flashing across the facility. Aiden and his team pushed forward, reaching the hub's core. It was a massive structure, pulsing with energy, feeding the entire city. If it were damaged, the consequences would be catastrophic. Aiden took a deep breath. "We have one shot at this. Follow my lead." The Velari systems were highly advanced, but Aiden noticed something their logic had overlooked: a feedback loop in the energy flow that could be used to shut down the rogue faction's devices temporarily. It was risky. Miscalculation could overload the core, but humans thrived on risk when guided by intuition. Lyra glanced at him, her eyes wide. "Captain, are you certain?" Suddenly, a rogue faction leader appeared, a tall Velari with silver markings on his face. He had anticipated interference, but not humans acting with such precision. "You dare interfere?" he hissed, raising a weapon. Aiden stepped forward, his voice steady. "We dare because you underestimated us." "That is your mistake." "You are remarkable human. I underestimated you." Back on the Starfire, Aiden allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. He looked at Lyra, who stood silently near the observation window, watching the distant cities. "You did well today," she said softly. "So did you," he replied. "Without your knowledge of their systems, we wouldn't have succeeded. Not just in courage, but in understanding and intuition. I will admit, I did not expect this." It was not just his accomplishment, it was humanity's. Humans, long underestimated, were proving themselves in a world that had never valued them. And in Lyra's eyes, he could see that respect forming, slowly but undeniably. The days that followed were filled with tense meetings, strategic planning, and cautious cooperation. The rogue faction had been neutralized, but other threats loomed, both from within the Velari political structure and from unexplored corners of the system. Aiden and his crew worked tirelessly, earning trust through action and ingenuity. During one quiet moment on the observation deck, Aiden spoke to Lyra. "You know, I never expected to feel at home in another species, world. And we care for each other and for the worlds we touch. And perhaps it is time for the Velari to see it too." He thought of the rogue faction, of the Council, and of Lyra. Humans had entered a world that doubted them, and yet, through courage, ingenuity, and adaptability, they had begun to carve a place for themselves. Somewhere, deep in the Velari Council chambers, whispers spoke of the human captain who dared to challenge expectation and succeed. Aiden had not sought glory. He had simply acted as humans do, with determination, intuition, and courage. And that, he realized, was more powerful than any technology or tradition. Humans had survived, humans had triumphed, and humans had shown the Velari that they were not to be underestimated. Lyra's words echoed in his mind. You are unlike anyone I have met. There is something about your kind that challenges everything I know. The stars stretched endlessly before him, bright and full of promise. And in that endless expanse, humans would continue to prove themselves, daring where others hesitated, risking where others feared, and thriving where others expected failure. Captain Aiden Marks felt alive, inspired, and unstoppable. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, and this was only the beginning. The following days on Zaratha's Prime were tense but promising. Captain Aiden Marks and his crew had earned a measure of respect from the Velari Council, but the system was far from stable. Small signs of unrest persisted, and the rogue faction's influence lingered like a shadow. Every step required vigilance, every decision demanded caution, but Aiden thrived under pressure. Aiden sat with Lieutenant Margot and the rest of the human crew in the briefing room of the Starfare. The room's walls shimmered faintly, a Velari design meant to enhance focus. Sensors have detected unusual energy readings near the northern trade sector, Margot said. It could be another faction attempt. They wish to observe the strategy and cooperation firsthand. Aiden's human instincts, honed by years of exploration and improvisation, allowed him to anticipate dangers the Velari overlooked. Upon arrival, they discovered that the rogue faction had rigged several transport hubs with energy disruptors. These devices could paralyze movement across the sector, causing chaos that would ripple into the city's core. Here's the problem, Lyra said, pointing to the energy schematic. Each disruptor is linked to the others. Deactivate one and the rest will adapt. You will need a coordinated approach. Distract some devices while others move in to shut down the main control. We improvise if anything changes. The first team disabled the outer disruptors with small, temporary energy shields. Meanwhile, Aiden and his team approached the central control hub. His crew followed his lead, improvising when traps appeared. Velari technology was elegant, but humans excelled at thinking beyond patterns, exploiting loopholes the Velari could not perceive. A sudden alarm blared. A disruptor detected movement and began sending an energy pulse through the sector. Aiden acted instantly, ordering his crew to redirect energy flows while he manually adjusted the core system. Sparks flew, lights flickered, and the tension was unbearable, but humans thrived on moments like this. Lyra observed from above, impressed at the speed and adaptability of the humans. "Captain," she said, her voice carrying both warning and admiration, "you are reckless, but it works. I do not understand how you remain so calm." The council members who had watched closely nodded in acknowledgement. Even the skeptics seemed convinced humans were a force to be reckoned with. After the mission, Lyra approached Aiden. "You risked a great deal today. Most humans would have panicked or made mistakes. Today, it worked in our favor." Intelligence reports indicated that the rogue faction was planning a large-scale disruption during an upcoming ceremonial event, an attack that could destabilize the entire council and create chaos across the system. Aiden and Lyra worked together to plan a response. Humans' ability to think quickly, improvise, and take calculated risks complemented the Velari's precision and technological mastery. Their combined approach formed a strategy that neither species could achieve alone. The day of the ceremony arrived. The council hall shimmered with radiant energy as dignitaries from across the system gathered. Humans were allowed to observe from a secure platform, a sign of trust from the Velari. Aiden's heart raced, not just from the potential danger, but because this mission could determine the future of human-Velari relations. As the ceremony began, sensors detected rogue faction infiltrators attempting to breach security. Aiden quickly assessed the situation. He instructed human and Velari teams to intercept, using diversions, improvised barriers, and precise coordination. Humans moved unpredictably, while Velari technology covered critical points. The rogue faction's devices were sophisticated, but they could not anticipate human improvisation. When a disruptor threatened to disable the council's protective shields, Aiden manually redirected energy, risking a short circuit. Sparks flew, but the system stabilized. The council watched, astonished at the human captain's audacity. Lyra fought alongside him, combining Velari tactical skill with human flexibility. "Captain," she shouted over the alarms, "your kind is remarkable. I understand now why the council allows humans among us." The council formally praised Aiden and his crew, acknowledging that humans had played a crucial role in preventing disaster. In a private moment afterward, Lyra approached Aiden. Her expression was softer than he had ever seen it. You have proven something important, not only skill and courage, but the value of your kind. Perhaps the Veleri underestimated humans for too long. You challenge everything I believed. Aiden's leadership, combined with the crew's ingenuity, helped prevent further sabotage attempts. Veleri officials began to observe the humans closely, taking notes on their adaptability, courage, and teamwork. During one evening on the observation deck of the Starfarer, Lyra joined Aiden. They watched the glowing cities of Zarath's Prime below, reflecting in their eyes. You know, she said softly, I still do not fully understand humans, but I am beginning to see why your kind survives and thrives where others fail. And I find myself curious about you and about your people. Perhaps I was wrong to judge so quickly. Yet Aiden felt confident. Humans had begun to prove themselves among the Veleri, showing courage, intelligence, and heart. Lyra smiled faintly. Perhaps we will learn from each other yet, Captain. I think the Council will soon see that humans are more than they expected. We humans are not to be underestimated. The Veleri had begun to acknowledge that humans were more than curiosity. They were capable, worthy, and resilient. And as he looked at the stars stretching endlessly above Zarath's Prime, Aiden felt a surge of excitement. The galaxy was wide, full of unknown challenges and opportunities. Humanity had shown that it could thrive, even in a world that doubted it, and this was only the beginning. The stars called to him, bright and full of promise. Humans had proven themselves on Zarath's Prime, and the future awaited, a future where courage, creativity, and heart could change the course of the galaxy. Captain Aiden Marks felt a deep, thrilling certainty. Humanity would continue to rise, adapt, and triumph, no matter what challenges lay ahead. The day of the Veleri Grand Assembly had arrived. It was the first time in history that humans were allowed full participation, not merely as observers, but as active contributors to the discussion of planetary and interstellar affairs. Captain Aiden Marks felt the weight of history on his shoulders. The rogue faction had been defeated, but the Council wanted to ensure stability and to integrate humans into their society, at least as partners in diplomacy and exploration. Aiden stood in the Grand Hall, the walls shimmering with radiant energy, their colors shifting like liquid light. Lyra was beside him, her presence steady and commanding. Despite her calm demeanor, he noticed the faint tension in her posture. She, too, understood that this assembly could change everything. The council members floated onto their platforms, their expressions unreadable. Some were curious, others skeptical, and a few openly wary. Aiden's human crew watched from a safe platform, ready to act if necessary. He felt a mix of anticipation and resolve. Humans had survived the test so far, but this was a different kind of challenge. A test not of courage under fire, but of diplomacy, influence, and trust. The assembly began with formal greetings, ceremonial displays of light and energy, and the expected rituals of Veleri protocol. Humans were expected to listen quietly, but Aiden knew that observation alone would not secure respect. Humans had earned their place here through action, but now their qualities, adaptability, creativity, and courage, needed to be recognized openly. Lyra leaned slightly toward him. The council will listen, but only if you speak carefully. Your words must show not just humanity's skill, but its values. Honorable members of the Veleri Council, he began, his voice steady, humans are often underestimated in your society. We are not as fast as your machines, not as precise as your calculations, not as elegant as your culture. But we have something that cannot be measured by logic alone: courage, adaptability, and persistence. We face uncertainty without fear. We act even when the outcome is unknown, and we care for those we protect. We have shown that humans are not a threat, but a partner. And in that partnership, we offer more than skill or strength. We offer creativity, intuition, and determination. Qualities that complement your own in ways that can secure peace and progress for all species in this system. A few nodded subtly. Lyra's gaze met Aiden's, and he could see a mixture of pride and admiration in her eyes. One council member, an elder with flowing silver markings, spoke. You claim that humans are unpredictable, yet capable. Why should we trust unpredictability in our system? It is the ability to adapt, to think beyond limitations, to solve problems when rules fail. Veleri society is precise and magnificent, but humans bring a perspective that can anticipate what is beyond expectation. Together, we are stronger. But every failure teaches us. Every mistake strengthens us. Humans survive not because we are perfect, but because we learn, we adapt, and we persevere. That is what makes us valuable allies. It seems the humans are not merely visitors. Perhaps they are equals. Captain Marks has demonstrated what I had doubted. Humans have qualities we Velari respect and rarely acknowledge: courage, insight, adaptability, and heart. For this, I vouch personally. Humanity deserves recognition as allies and partners in our system. Her respect had always mattered, but her public acknowledgement signaled a shift in the Council itself. The Assembly concluded with formal agreements. Humans would be granted official status as partners, their contributions recognized in Council proceedings and interstellar projects. There would be joint efforts in exploration, technology sharing, and planetary defense. It was a historic day, and humans had earned it entirely on their merits. Later, as the ceremony ended and the crowds dispersed, Aiden and Lyra stood together on the observation platform overlooking the city. The sunlight reflected off the floating structures, painting the scene in gold and silver. "You have done it," Lyra said softly. "Humans are no longer merely tolerated. You have earned respect, recognition, and trust." The words carried more than admiration, they carried connection. "We humans have a way of proving ourselves when it matters most," he said. "Sometimes it surprises everyone, including ourselves." Exploration missions were planned together, security and research programs integrated, and trade and cultural exchanges expanded. Aiden and his crew continued to demonstrate humanity's value, not through dominance, but through intelligence, courage, and integrity. One afternoon, while reviewing plans for a joint exploration mission, Lyra spoke quietly to Aiden. "Captain Marks, do you think your kind will ever be fully understood by the Velari?" "It seems it is enough." Aiden stood on the observation deck of the Starfarer one evening, watching the city's glow below. Lyra joined him, her hand resting lightly on the railing beside his. The connection between them was unspoken but undeniable, a mutual respect born from shared challenge and triumph. "You know," she said softly, "I remember the first words you said to me. 'Hey, beauty queen,' I thought you were foolish. Not just for humans, but for all of us. Together, we're stronger than we were apart." Courage, creativity, adaptability, and heart had carried them further than technology alone ever could. Lyra looked at him again. Perhaps this is only the beginning. And no matter what lay ahead, humans would meet it with determination, courage, and ingenuity. The Starfarer lifted off from Zaratha's prime, carrying its crew and new allies into the infinite expanse of space. The universe was full of possibilities, and humans were ready to face them all. Aiden felt a surge of hope and pride. Humans had been underestimated, dismissed, and doubted, yet they had proven themselves. They had faced superior technology, complex political systems, and deadly threats, and triumphed. Lyra stood beside him, watching the stars stretch endlessly ahead. "Captain Marks, your kind is extraordinary. We rise when we are challenged. We thrive when we are underestimated. That is what makes us human." Humans had earned their place among the stars, and the universe would soon see that their spirit could not be ignored, their ingenuity could not be dismissed, and their courage could not be defeated. With the Starfarer moving steadily into the unknown, humans and Velari together faced the galaxy's challenges, proving that strength is not always measured in power or precision, but in heart, courage, and the willingness to rise above expectations. And in that truth, humanity shone brighter than ever.